Pretty Soldiers Sailor Moon R, released in 1993 for the Nintendo Family Computer from Bandai and Angel, and yeah, I know, this is a reproduction card, it has a translation patch, and this is somewhat out of left field. Well, this game not really. This other one though, that's the fun one. Yes, so my first exposure to the ever-present Sailor Moon saga was the original 90s anime from back in the day. Or rather, the original English dub of the anime where everyone sounded much older than they should, and they basically spoiled the whole premise of the series within the very first episode because, you know, Americans are stupid. But this was largely a franchise that I'd be on and off with. I saw the 2003 live-action show via fan subs, I saw the Crystal anime, and the only manga that I have was the 2-volume, originally 3, codenamed Sailor V thing that predates all this Sailor Moonshine, and of course the 2 aforementioned video games. So I don't claim to know everything, but I know just enough. And quite frankly, just enough is all you really need for today's subject matter, because Sailor Moon R on the Super Famicom is a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you move to the right, beat up a bunch of monsters, lather, rinse, repeat for about 4 stages with multiple segments. So it's not a particularly long game, which some might see as a bit of a negative, but I think it's alright. The game doesn't overstay its welcome, and it more or less follows the back end of the second season with the Black Moon people and Chibiusa. They skip the whole Makai tree with the alien and everyone losing their memories in the front end, which, whatever, take it or leave it, I suppose. Sailor Moon R gives you 5 playable Sailor Soldiers. Soldiers, Guardians, Scouts, whatever you want to call them, and each have their own attacks and attributes. Some are well balanced, some hit harder, some move faster, and Jupiter's pretty much the Hagger of the group. You can punch, grab and toss foes, do a life-draining spinning move thing, do the jump kick thing, the usual beat-em-up tropes. If you hold down the attack button, you can charge up and fire a projectile attack when your little power meter is full, though you'll have to be a little precise with the aiming if you want this to be effective. You also have a limited number of screen nukes that you could use to get yourself out of a bind or just lessen the busy work in general. Scattered throughout the games are various life-restoring food items, more screen nukes, and other bits and bobs. You start off with 3 lives and a limited number of continues, of which you can set in the options screen, and the game does let you continue where you left off, though you're pretty much stuck with whoever you picked from the start of the game because the game won't let you swap characters. So choose wisely, I guess. The game can be played with either 1 or 2 players, or you could partake in a 2-player battle mode where you each pick a soldier and beat the crap out of each other, best of 3 falls, that sort of thing. There is also a Chibiusa mode where you play as Chibiusa, and this is pretty much the easy mode of the game. Her short height means most enemy attacks will whiff you, and you can pick away at them rather easily. The only downside is that you can't throw people, but that's to be expected, considering you're playing a little kid beating up monsters twice your height, and she's practically the best character in the game. Sailor Moon R, there's not much to talk about. It's a no-frills beat-em-up. It follows the standard conventions of most beat-em-ups and is competently executed in that regard. Each of the 5 characters have their signature special attacks replicated as best as possible in this format, complete with voice bites. Control is pretty much simple to grasp and fairly functional for the most part. The hit detection can be wonky at times, especially with the projectiles, but more often than not, it's fine. There's a couple enemies that come across as kind of cheap with their special attacks, but they can be conquered. And like I said, this isn't a long game at 4 stages, which means it's not going to overstay its welcome, but it is otherwise typical beat-em-up fare. Plays about as well as any other beat-em-up in the genre. And by the way, there was another Sailor Moon game of this ilk released for the Super Famicom prior to this one. I have not played it, so I can't compare it, so I won't, but apparently it's worth mentioning and whatever, so yeah. Sailor Moon R has some good graphics. The characters are large, resemble who they're supposed to resemble, the sailors have some nice idle animations and reactive mugshots, and the very few cutscenes and intermissions in the game are simple, but they look good. They did try to implement the transformation sequences after you pick a character, which isn't much, but hey, the gesture's appreciated. Backdrops are more than fine, game as a whole runs fairly consistently with little to no bouts of slowdown, or at least none that I've noticed, which is nice. Sound is a bit on the weakish side of things, though there's a couple bright spots. There's a bunch of vocal clips of the girls shouting out their signature attacks. They sound alright for the most part. There's a nice recreation of the title theme, though the rest of the game's musical bits are a bit on the tinny side of things, sometimes a bit slow sounding, but it's not terrible. Sound effects are fine, not much to say there. Overall, Pretty Soldier Sailor Moon R for the Super Famicom is, well, it's a beat 'em up. It's familiar fare to anyone who has played countless games in the genre. It's really nothing special in the long run, but it's a fairly competent and sometimes even fun little game with a couple side games tossed in for good measure. All in all, not too bad.